there's 2 points I want to take up. I'll just mention them to make sure I don't forget the second one. The first is that there are some instant pleasures that can be pursued, and they're very persuasive in that the pleasure's all now. And there's also another point I wish to deal with, which is a theoretical, very surprising feature, and that is that you can do things that are certain in uncertain situations. Now, the extreme is the one that I've already mentioned, and I'm going to deal with this one first. I'll deal with the first point afterwards. At least I've made a note of it. Well, the extreme is, if I am devoted to my God, I have life eternal. Well, that's an infinite gain. There is an uncertainty about it, possibly quite high, as to whether my God exists, whether he'd be like this, whether I qualify, etc., and so forth. But if I evaluate the alternative, and the alternative is very meagre, it's an average sort of life pursuing what everybody else in the more secular world seems to be pursuing, which doesn't bring happiness and brings an awful lot of sorrow. Well, both situations are uncertain. For instance, the secular life could conceivably turn out all right. If that's not likely, then to that extent, the gains in the secular life, expectation-wise, are not good. Pretty poor, discounted by the probability of turning out well. Whereas the gain from the godly approach is an extremely high return, indefinite. I mean, it's approaching infinite itself, isn't it? You know, even if it's moderately better than what, even if it's moderately better than what the secular outcome is likely to be, an infinite time period of it is worth. Why discount it? I mean, it's obviously worth more, isn't it? In the literal extreme, of course, if the secular world reliably doesn't bring something I really value, but the God option brings the possibility of something I value, or nothing, you know, just oblivion. God didn't exist. When I died, end of story. Well, I'm best going for the God option, because an infinite time series of something positive at even a very low probability is still infinite, and certainly better than the no God option. If the no God option does stand a possibility of success, well, then I could be, preoccupied with what is this no God option possibly going to come to. He has everything, the car, the yacht, the wife, the kids, health. Well, it comes to dying in the end, typically. We haven't solved that one yet. And if we do, it's very unlikely you could maintain the material options gains indefinitely. Something is going to turn up untoward that's going to wreck the show. Do you see you can enter a situation where they may both be uncertain options, but you're quite clear which is the better of the uncertain options than the other? Now, when I say you're quite clear, what I mean is you're approaching certainty on it. We're never entirely approaching certainty on it because my reasoning could be wrong. Reasoning itself could be invalid. The premise on which the reasoning is built may be invalid. For instance, if I can get the yacht, the wife, the car, the house, health, and the finance indefinitely, do I just become chronically bored, going out of my mind with more of the same? Whereas if I choose the godly option, do I adjust to being indefinitely satisfied? Perhaps because of my continual adjustment as to who I am and what I become. Do you see, the sky's the limit, as you would imagine, with the God option. In fact, the sky's not even the limit with the God option. That's the whole point. There are no limits. Right, now I should return to the first point, which is, what about these passing pleasures? You know, there's cake on the table, and I think, well, I'd enjoy eating that. Shall I have a slice? Shall I? Now it looms large because the current pleasure of the cake is quite high. It's instant gratification. I mean, so much so that if you are going to have a slice this evening, you may as well have it now and not later. You know, it's that sort of, it's quite impressing on you. Well, if you're going to have the God option, you certainly got to have some amazing facility at resisting temptation like that. And by temptation, I mean the temptation to have the pleasure now, even though it is not your long-run option at all. You know, a person who eats the cake too often just gets into problem. And that applies to any of the goodies, you know, that it is. Perhaps you just love the speed, or you just, you know, you love rushing, so you'll rush this time and next time and the time after. You'll very likely have an accident in the end, you know? Because rushing is in some sense defined as not taking the due care that really is due, and you're not willing to recognize that you're discounting the long-run cost to you that you would see now if you put your mind to it. Right, that's the answer then. I'll put my mind to it. There's the cheese. I'd like a bit of cheese on toast. Yes, I understand that. It's not in my health interest. So no, I find it repellent. You don't find it repellent if you don't review that it's not in your interest. And you continue to hold the mind there. It is not in my interest, is it? No, it's not. I'm clear on that. Oh. Then, of course, it's a case of habit. In the end, the sheer sight of cheese, and you just think, oh, I don't eat that. End of story. Sorry if your career happens to be in making cheese and selling it and so on. You see what I mean? This is only example. Okay. It applies to all the instant gratification things. It applies to medium-term gratification too. This might bring fun, I don't know, being a boxer, but in the long run, boxers suffer from the following health problems. And the more you are concerned with the long run, the more you will not go for boxing, okay? Even if you enjoy it in the short run. That's what I mean, of course. Many of us wouldn't enjoy it in the short run at all, but even the idea. So quite simply, the solution is discrimination, isn't it? You discriminate between those short-run pleasures that you're allowed and those short-run pleasures that you do not allow yourself, because you when you feel you're weakening, you automatically preoccupy yourself with your consciousness of the longer run costs and how important that is to you. How important it would be to you today if you'd made this decision a few years back. I mean, for argument's sake, you're thinking of having an alcoholic drink, and you think to yourself, well, if I'd done this 10 years ago as a solution to my problems, where would I likely be today? Do I prefer that to what I am? No way. Right, and I'm not having it. Now, some people say, of course, as a response to this, what about all things in moderation? Well, cyanide in moderation, I'm not sure. It could conceivably be a cure for some illness in a very short run period and small amounts. But it sounds pretty dodgy to me. Don't think I'll risk it. So, I don't think all things in moderation. Some things certainly need to be in moderation to be at all safe, and sometimes they're not very safe even in moderation. You draw close to an addiction, it pulls you in. And you draw close when you start taking up the habit. Once it becomes a habit, you're being pulled in hard, even when you want to get out. Okay. Thank you, Dad. We can go further. We can say, since the secular gain is finite in time, the probability of never dying in the secular world is pretty low, to say the least. Then even a mediocre gain of the godly to infinity is worth far more. Unless you don't value future, to the extent that you just discount the future regardless of probability, which I think most people might do that. Whether they do it consciously or not, I'm not sure, but if I can eat the chocolate now or later, there's a great tendency to eat the biscuit or the chocolate now, not save it for tomorrow as well, even, until I've had enough satiation now to get down to the value of what I see it as tomorrow in my present time period. In other words, my discount simply because of time. Am I discounting because of uncertainty about the future, which does increase with time itself, of course, the more years, the more uncertainty? Or am I discounting it because of, I want it now? Even if I would get the same value of it tomorrow, I don't hold that as a value to me in the same way as having it now. The now is important. There's actually a literal time discount, not just uncertainty. Even in uncertainty situations, I may still have a time discount. Now that is to prefer one's present person against tomorrow's present, what will be present, your present person tomorrow. And you're treating yourself like a stranger now, aren't you? See, I don't just discount, typically the world doesn't just discount what the stranger will get from this piece of cake if I give it to them instead of eating it myself. They discount it not because of greater uncertainty of it being of value to them, although it may be, but they may also, and highly likely, are discounting it simply because it's given to them instead of themselves. And they get far more pleasure out of eating it themselves than seeing you eat it. So there's these two strands going on, isn't there? Uncertainty and pure time discount. And the uncertainty masquerades as a time discount, or supports, reinforces a time discount. Except for some people. Some people so value, for instance, becoming qualified, they'll go without an enormous amount now in order to get qualified. You know, the miser puts by the money today and sits in a cold room without eating so that he'll have more money tomorrow. And tomorrow he'll do the same, of course, and you think this is a very irrational preference. He's going to die doing this, isn't he? And have a very unhappy life getting there. And the answer is, well, no, not necessarily. He may love being a miser. He may get tremendous joy out of counting his money every night. I don't know. I'm not sure about this at all. I don't think so. I'm going to leave it there. This is a good point to leave it, I think. Thank you, Dan.